So coming to the small-scale fisheries, as you know, in India, we are a maritime country and we have both marine and inland fisheries. And both in marine and inland, we have got aquaculture and capture fisheries. Coming to in the marine fisheries, there is mariculture and marine capture fisheries. Today we are not going to talk about that. Today we will be talking about inland fisheries. Now, inland fisheries has two components, inland fisheries and inland aquaculture. So inland fisheries comprises the capture fisheries from the rivers, lakes, estuaries, etc. Then we have got the culture-based fisheries in small reservoirs, and then we have got enhanced capture fisheries in larger reservoirs. So when you talk about capture fisheries in rivers and estuaries, we don't interfere with the stocks. We only capture the wild stock of fish from that is existing in water body. Whereas when it comes to culture-based fisheries and enhanced capture fisheries, we also stock the water bodies. So we are enhancing the stock. That is different. But basically, it is also capture fisheries. So we have got these capture fisheries, and coming to inland aquaculture, we have got small-scale aquaculture. These are done by small operators. So they either their homestead pond or their own ponds, they make fish farming, or they lease the pond from the owners and do that. In any case, they are small players. And then integrated culture systems where fish culture is integrated with crops and other animal husbandry practices. And of course, there is a high-end, hyper-intensive aquaculture systems where high-cost RIS and so on. But if you look at the entire inland fishery scenario, you can see that barring that high-end aquaculture, RIS and hyper-intensive culture, the entire gamut of inland fisheries falls under the small-scale fisheries. Even though in the large reservoirs, the turnover of the fish may be running into thousands of tons, but the basic grassroots level operators, they are still small scale in operation, because if you take a largest reservoir also, it's a country boats or a small mechanized boat. So basically the entire gamut of inland fisheries falls under in the small scale fisheries. So if you again look at into the capture fisheries and aquaculture, let alone if you leave the aquaculture, then the entire capture fisheries, what happens is you can see the, can you see the arrows? Yeah, the color is not coming. So the entire, capture, all this stock enhancement and this species enhancement and culture-based fisheries, all these are feeding into the capture fisheries. So as I told, the whole gamut of inland fisheries is coming under small scale. It's not moving. Can you change the slide? Go back. Yeah, come to the next. Yeah, next please. So here the open water fisheries, we have got, as I told you, the pure capture fisheries. Most of these capture fisheries are operated under common pool, as a common pool resource with almost free access or almost free access. And in some cases, river stretches are leased out to individuals. As you know, in Bihar and other places, there are hundreds of year-old practice, but then they changed it to the societies. But again, I think Ganesh Chandra will explain that. Again, there was problems there. But then enhanced fisheries is again, because stocking is involved, so then it is run by the cooperative societies or SHGs, where the fishing is done by the members of the societies. And sometimes these reservoirs are leased out to contractors. So then the contractors has the fishing rights. Then coming to small scale again, it is a own pond or a leased out pond. It's individual enterprise. So can you translate now? I will go on to the tenure issues. Can you share next slide? So now we come to the main subject of tenure. So tenure is defined as a relationship among people with respect to land and other natural resources. It is the tenure that determines who may benefit from the resource, like water, forest, fisheries, and so forth, and how long, and under what conditions these benefits are taken. This is all about the tenure. But in simple terms, tenure means how people gain access to the natural resources. Who has the legitimate right to use it and who does not. This is, in simple terms, tenure. Now, but it determines the relationship between people. So there are several groups of people operating in a resource. So this tenure is defining the relationship among different groups of people, and also they negotiate among themselves. But as livelihoods are dependent on access to control over the resources, it is a very vital aspect of small-scale fisheries. Now, tenure is also defined as a period during which the groups of individuals have a legitimate set of capacities to benefit from the fishery. So, but at the same time, it's also important to know whether these people are able to get those benefits. It is not enough that they get suppose a person is given the access, but he may not be able to use that access because of many other reasons. For example, there may be societal reasons, there may be caste consideration, there may be gender consideration. So it is equally important that this access can be exercised by the person. That is also a part of the tenure. But again, then tenure need not be about the holding or of the theory of access. That means property right is not the only criteria here. Unlike other land sectors, property right is important, but here this access is represented as an ability to benefit. It's very important because in our system, in Indian system, most of the things, most of the rights are not in official legal things. It is maybe informal way or because of customary practice. So when these are operating, this definition of ability to benefit is more relevant to Indian conditions. Now, indeed, a regular feature of the customary arrangements, because most of them are customary arrangements, a regular feature is that individuals are often subject to many constraints so that he is enabled, so he is able to use those access rights. I think simply you can explain that. Yeah. But the basic principles they have. Yeah, little bit tough, but afterwards it is. This is the only part. Okay, next slide, please. So what is the role of tenure. Actually, the key goal of the tenure should be to improve the food security and the livelihoods of the livelihood and the contributions towards human well-being. That should be the aim of the tenure, with an emphasis on vulnerable and marginalized people. So protection of tenure and the access right of Indian water bodies becomes very critical, because unless this tenure is protected, we cannot achieve the target of food security and livelihood security. Now, considering that in our country, mostly informal systems are prevailing, so it is very important for us to explore the role of tenure in the fisheries governance. This is especially pertinent to where there are many implications for dependent people regarding changes in tenure arrangements. For example, if, as you know, water bodies are being taken for other purposes or reclaimed for other purposes, then what is the tenure, what the benefit that the tenure, people who got the tenure enjoyed, that gets, that may not be clear there. So what happens is that, so when compensation is given or alternate employment is given, then this tenure, unless the tenure is defined properly, they will remain out of the radar. So this is very important that the tenure of Indian fisheries governance is properly defined, so that later when it is mainstreamed into our policies, this will be taken care of. This is very important. I will in the next some other points also I will explain the same concept. So another important aspect of governance, tenure, is tenure governance. Tenure governance is the mechanism through which these tenure rights are maintained. So how tenure rights are allocated, that is governance of tenure, and how it is administered and changed or legalized. Suppose there is already a tenure somebody is enjoying, but it has to be legalized. It has to be documented as legal, and it can be transferred to others. At the moment, it's all very hazy. That is why in the earlier first introduction, I told that unless these things are defined and mainstreams into our legislative and policy framework, it is not going to help anybody. So again, the governance involves how to acquire the rights to control resources and how to protect already existing. Suppose there is an already existing right, as I told you, there is an already existing right, and it is to be protected if it is to be taken away. At that time, we should define it and keep it in place. So a weak tenure governance will lead to inadequate and insecure tenure rights to natural resources. Yes. Next slide. So now coming to the fisheries side in particular. So if you compare the tenure arrangements in the land-based agriculture sector or crop sector, there are well-defined parameters. There is the title holding of the land, and then there is a crop used and crop pattern and crop seasons. There are so many parameters which are well defined. But when it comes to fisheries, it is a lot of complications are there. So it is still in an emerging. So FAO itself has stated that it is still an emerging concept. It is things are only developing. So this is the time when we have to define all these parameters. Now, customary and traditional tenure systems in fishing communities exist. Doesn't mean that we don't have it. We have it, but it is customary and traditional. We follow the tradition because all water bodies have been allowed for fishers for their fishing. But that is not as defined as what is happening in the agriculture sector, whether you can lease out your land for a particular period, a particular crop, and so on. So ineffective governance of tenure constitutes a major obstacle. This is a major obstacle for sustainable and equitable and efficient use of our resources. In fact, many small-scale fishing communities suffer insecure access to the resources they depend. This is an impediment to livelihood and poverty alleviation. So I told it is very complex. How the complexities, next one please. How the complexities come. First and foremost, these small-scale fisheries in inland takes place in a wide range of environments, like rivers, reservoirs, floodplains, peri-urban wetlands, estuaries, river deltas, etc. But in all these places, totally different kinds of tenure arrangements exist. And even in one system, in different places, different tenure systems exist. So it's so complicated. Then another very difficult part is that these are not formal laws. Many of these things are not written in our statute. So very few are in formal law, otherwise it is customary law or a traditional practice. So this is again an impediment. Unless we identify these and put it into legal framework, these rights cannot be exercised. In fact, these customary law and traditional practices govern who can benefit, in what way he can benefit, and at what conditions he can benefit, and for how long he can benefit. All these things are decided by customary and traditional practice. This is one complexity that arises here. Tenure can also establish whether rights can be transferred under what condition. These are to be defined and put down so that this becomes a law of the land. So, therefore, the tenure arrangements are very dynamic. It is affected by action. See, one action of one set of individual or one individual can affect the whole tenure process. For example, if a influential person in that community, if he can influence the change, or a set of people can influence the change through influencing the influential people like state or religious bodies, etc. So it's a very dynamic process, and that is most of the complications coming from that. Yeah, I think I'll proceed after translation. Next slide. So now this tenure cannot be standalone process because tenure has to be combined with other access. Suppose a water body given, you have been given access to a water body, but perhaps that alone will not help because associated with that you should have access to land, housing, markets, financial resources, information, legal systems, and social services like education, healthcare, and sanitation. Unless they have, the beneficiaries have access to all these things, that tenure for just to entering the water body alone will not help. For example, if you are given permission to fish in a water body, but then the land adjoining that water body is also should be accessible, and he should be allowed to use his crafts and gear in the adjoining land. So this is a very, it cannot be taken in isolation. So thus the fisheries tenure cannot be viewed in isolation. This FAO is stating that, but it needs to be considered in connection with a broader and livelihood concerns. So if livelihood context, so whatever associated access required for livelihood context, all should be given in a bundle, not just water body alone. So I think you can proceed with that. Then I will come to this. Okay, we have done about the tenure. Now let us move on to the ownership of water bodies and who is using that water. That concept we are going. So it is very difficult to put in one slide. So I have taken three major categories. One is the capture fisheries of rivers and estuaries, etc. Second is I will go for the stock enhanced fisheries of reservoirs, and third about the small scale aquaculture. Now coming to the capture fisheries, invariably the water ownership is with the government. Government is the owner, and fishing rights are given either to cooperative societies or SSGs, or in some cases it is leased out to private holders. Some river stretches are given to private enterprises. So they employed by those person who get the lease, they are the actual fishers. Whereas in cooperative society, the members have the right to fish, and then sometimes there free access is there, so it is free fishing. Fishers can fish in the government-owned water body. So second model is the reservoirs and wetlands, where again the ownership is with the government or government-owned agencies. Fishing rights is given either to cooperative societies or private leaseholders. Many states they auction the reservoirs to private holders. Rajasthan and all the reservoirs are given. Then the merits of that we'll discuss little later. Then here again, cooperative, when it is given to cooperative societies, the members of the societies or SSGs, they have the fishing rights. And sometimes the government department directly stock the water body and they issue license to fishers. So licensed fishers, and the stocking is done by the fisheries department. And when it is leased to individuals, the individual stocking. Here the stocking is you can see the stocking is a management practice that is done by to whom it is given on lease. So if it is given on lease to cooperative, they do the stocking. And if it is given to private individual, he does the stocking, and government is stocking when there is a free fishing. So here again, ownership with the government, fishing rights with this group of people, and fishers are fishing. Coming to the small-scale aquaculture, again, ownership is either with the private owner, fish farm owner, or pond owner, or sometimes the government or local self-governments, they own the ponds. So they lease it to cooperative societies, SSGs, and members of the societies, they fish. And pond owner, he himself make the farming, or he lease it out to leaseholders. So here the farmers are either leaseholders or cooperative society members or fish farmer himself. So ownership is again with individuals or sometimes with the government. So this is the general pattern. And again, next one please. If I summarize that, what happens here is that there is a rivers and estuaries is more or less common pool resource. There are two types. One is free access and the other is auctioned river stretches. And in the free access, anyone can fish. And when auctioned to panidars, so only the people employed by the panidar, they only can fish. Coming to the enhanced fisheries, it is again a common pool, but common pool with a limited access. Here, there are 4 types of fishing rights. One is fishing licenses issued by the government. Second is leased to fishers, cooperative societies. Third is leased to local communities. Sometimes, reservoirs fishing rights are given to the people who are ousted from the reservoir while forming the reservoirs. Then particular community is allowed. So a fixed community is allowed, and then finally the water body is leased to individual holder. In this case, those hired by the individual leaseholder, they are the fishers. Yeah, I think you can translate now. I think we have considered the ownership and fishing rights distribution. Now, specific issues faced by the small-scale fisheries. Again, I will go into 3 parts. One is for enhanced fisheries, one for capture fisheries, and one for inland small-scale aquaculture. Coming to enhanced fisheries, the issues are many small-scale fishing communities suffer due to flawed tenure governments. Then their insecure access is because not only the water bodies, they have access not only to water bodies, but also they have no access to post-harvest processing and marketing infrastructure. So tenure governance process is flawed because cooperative societies are not very effective. So if cooperative societies are not effective, that's a flawed governance and that will be a problem. Then access is given water bodies at the same time, unless they are given support in post-harvest processing and marketing infrastructure, then there is no use of that. Then another very important factor is the fishers are sometimes denied access because of ownership tussles between different departments. This is a very important issue because irrigation department, power generation, and there are several agencies, Ministry of Environment and Forest, they own the reservoir and they have got different concept of managing the water body. And this can lead to very big problems. I can give an example. In 10 years back in Kerala, most of the reservoirs in Kerala are falling under a forest, and forest people suddenly stopped allowing the fisheries department to stock the water bodies. So it was a big problem. Then the Chief Minister himself called a meeting of experts, and I happened to be a part of that process. And then with the Forest Department and the Fisheries Department on either side, we had to reconcile, and we have to convince the Chief Minister that there are livelihoods involved, and even if you, and the forest people, their concept is that you should not touch it. No, you should not enter the water body. That is their concept. So this can be a big problem. And then there is again within the state, within the fisheries fraternity, there could be conflicts. There are in some states, certain categories of reservoirs are given to corporations, certain to the local self-government, certain to the Department of Fishery, and they don't see eye to each other, and there is a lot of problems, and they follow different. But unless we bring everything under one umbrella, all these exercises will become meaningless. So access to resources get weakened because the fishers inland body are generally not empowered. They are not empowered, so they do not know their rights and how they can make a change if they are properly united. Then not organized into strong community platforms. They should have a strong community platform, whether it is cooperative society or SHGs, whatever, but they should have a strong basis, so they should know their rights and they should know what to do with the resource. Then another, the rather long food chain, this is market food chain. This is also very, very important because capture fisheries person, he does not have the capability to sell it directly to the market. So what he mostly he is located in a very remote places. So he has to sell it to the local merchant. Local merchant again give it to another merchant who is the nearest town. The nearest town guy, he will send it to the wholesale market in big cities like Howrah and such places. So what happens is that by the time it reaches there, the price escalates, and then again another down the line again for distribution there is a long chain. So ultimately the consumer what he pays and the producer who catches the fish, he gets very little out of it. And SIFRI has done a study long back. Then they have found out that consumers 1 rupee. Aquaculture farmer, he gets 70 paisa out of it, and 30 paisa only goes to the market chains. Whereas in capture fisheries, just reverse. The fisher who fishes in the water body, he gets only 30 paisa, and the 70 paisa being distributed different market intermediates. This is the situation that we are. So this rather long food chain is another impediment. So coming to the capture fisheries again, it is, as I told, access is the main thing. Free access, but then free access has its own demerits. But if you give free for all, then that's also detrimental to the stock, because there should have some regulations need to be there, because already you have pointed out some member from this side, they pointed out that the use of irregular or destructive fishing gear, that can be a big issue there. So we have to follow certain, then overcapacity and overfishing, the juvenile catch, there are so many issues. So you have to work with the norms. That's a free access is not a very, very desirable thing. And then auctioning river stretches is to discourage. As I was telling that last 400 years, Bihar stretches were given to panidars. But then out of public outcry, it has been changed over to the cooperative society. There also, again, people are hijacking the cooperative societies, and finally it becomes a very undesirable situation. So the remedy is that, as Dr. Das told, high empowerment is important. If you empower, then things can be changed. Then Fisheries access should be linked with the conditions of following policies of conservation, as I already told. Along with fisheries rights, there are duties also. No right comes without duties. So you have to be be careful. And then already there is a code of conduct for responsible fisheries by FAO. This is to be followed. Then not only the administrators and government, but fishers also are responsible to follow practices. Then lastly, the tenure issues in small-scale aquaculture. Here again, small-scale farmers need a strong policy level support, because their high-end, hyper-intensive aquaculture practice, they have resources and they have access to information, processing facilities, and market infrastructure, whereas the small scale operator does not enjoy all these things. So he has to be protected in this, because secondly, the small scale aquaculture, they are not treated as agriculture farmer, because when country boasts about the growth in aquaculture, a major part of the growth is contributed by the fisheries sector. Whereas their agriculture crops alone, it is very low. Whereas animal sciences and fisheries contribute the agriculture growth. But it comes to benefits, fisheries is not at par with agriculture. The result is that they do not enjoy the power tariff benefit, concessional power tariff, the infrastructure and tax benefits, support price, and there are so many other incentives agriculture people enjoy, but fisheries do not enjoy. So a few states have already declared fisheries as at par with aquaculture, as par with agriculture, but most of the states did not do that. And because fisheries department alone cannot do the fisheries department tells that it has the higher levels or at the state level it has to be decided. So I happen to be a member of the policy subcommittee of the state government, and we have strongly recommended to the government to follow the other states to declare aquaculture as at par with agriculture. This will highly benefit the small scale fishers. Yes. Pardon? You want to go back to one slide? Earlier slide, please. Earlier to this. One prior to this. This one? This one. Okay. This third bullet is very important. Many times the government approach is maximizing the revenue rather than developing the productivity so that fishers are benefited. That is a very important point. No, let them. Next slide. They may need. Next one. Yeah, keep their view. Wait, they are still going on. Okay. Okay. So, yeah. No, I think you have to go one back. Yeah, this is the. Okay, now we have to examine the governance, institutional and policy environments. So now the tenure rights inland fisheries are associated with institutional arrangements. So unless there is, as I told earlier, unless there is a strong community platform, you cannot exercise or take maximum benefit out of the tenure rights you are having. So then we know that cooperative societies are very ineffective in most of the cases. So what is to be done in that case? So what we can do about it? What we can do about it is, whenever there is a lack of institutional arrangement, so we have to enable, motivate and install a community management platform. If there is a strong community platform is not there, we have to assist them to do that. We have to make an effort to do that. So that, how can it be done? People should be made aware of their rights and their collective bargaining power. So if they are hijacked by somebody, they should be enlightened enough. So government can do is enabling them, motivating them, and invest money into that so that we can build such platform. Because inadequate policy instruments in support of fishers and small fish farmers is there because of this. But unless these are done, we cannot implement the SSF guidelines. So now governance arrangements, open water reservoir, the fish stock should be owned by the community. That is very clear, because now what happens is that they do not have the feeling of they own the fish. They own the fish stocks. Reservoir should be recognized as a community activity. Then co-management platforms are to be created. What co-management means, they have a group of people, the stakeholders, they take that. At the same time, in that there should be government representatives also. So government representative will see that what they do is according to the national other national policies on environment and so on. So sustainability, equity issues are there. All these to be managed by the government, to be taken care by the member of the government in that community. So now stock management, including stocking, shall be a responsibility of the community. So once, suppose what happens in agriculture, if you have a crop, you always protect your crop because it is your crop. But here, State Fisheries Department puts some fish stock into that, and then you go on fishing, someone else's thing. But it's a small reservoir, the community, they buy the fish seed, put it, and they will see to it that is protected and that is harvested properly. So they should own the stock. So now, benefits should be also shared by the community, because if suppose, as Dr. Das was telling, where there is a capacity for 500 kilogram per hectare, you are getting hardly 100 kilogram per hectare. If 400 kilogram is increased, this 400 kilogram worth extra income is shared by the whole community. So that should be made aware of that. Then community organizations should be empowered to make all decision making. Decision making should be theirs, and they should be allowed to make their own decisions. So I told community, why community? There is a reason for that. Reason is that increased production in a culture-based fishery or a stock-enhanced fishery is because of the natural food available in the water body. Fish grows by itself, and it is not that unlike the aquaculture, the man, he has to dig the pond, he has to buy inputs. So he has to invest a lot of money, and then he gets a return on investment. And he has the right to do that. Whereas here, the expenditure involved in stocking is very little, and also harvesting cost is little. But the whole benefit is by nature's endowment. So community has the right to have it. Although some investment is involved, but then overall it is a very inexpensive thing. So increase in production due to intervention is attributable to utilization of the production of water body rather than the return on investment. So moreover, in India, traditionally, water bodies are managed by the community. So if you write the right side graph, next one please. Okay, we are here. So now why community? I told you because it is a nature's thing and it is not a return on investment. You look at the pie diagram at the right side, you can see that in a aquaculture venture, the blue color, that is the investor, that is the owner of the aquaculture. He gets a maximum benefit and fishers get only a small share. Whereas in coming to the community-based fishery, the entire profit is divided into equally by many members. So slice is small slice, but everybody gets a slice there. So that is the importance of community activity. Next one, please. Yeah. Now, have you done so far? Okay. You want me? So we have been talking about the, now the recent trend is that everybody wants to shift from capture to culture. So it has got a long implications. First of all, as I told you earlier, we operate in a different range of systems. And both formal and legally recognized rights and informal rights are based on the customary practices. Now, in some large water bodies, you can see all all these are operation. For example, like a large reservoir. There is capture fishery there is enhanced fishery there, and also cage culture. So aquaculture and all these things are operating simultaneously. Now, there is evidence that the changes in the fisheries and in the tenure arrangements because of different environments. Now, there is a clear trend of increasing stocking and shift towards culture or culture-based fisheries. So, development of culture-based culture systems transforms the fisheries from the extractive nature to achieve better productivity. Here, more input-output relationship are there, people are attracted towards that. But this has got its own implications. One more tap. Yeah, enough. So these 3 points, very important, because if you shift from capture to culture, so there are so many implications on that. So many states are allocating leases of enclosed water bodies has been decided on different classes of categories of water bodies. For example,
sir, please.
Yeah. For example, Madhya Pradesh Nigam, see, they have got some categories of reservoirs. And Department of Fisheries, they have got categories of reservoirs. In Karnataka, some small reservoirs are with the local self-governments, Gram Panchayat, the village Panchayat, and
district panchayat. Some are with the corporations, large reservoirs are with corporations, and some reservoirs are with the Department of Fisheries. So all these, everywhere they are trying to increase productivity, either by culture-based fisheries or by cage culture. Now, next one, please. So those areas, this is where this slide is emphasizing on those 3 points I marked. Here, governments everywhere in the world, not only in India, worldwide, governments everywhere pursue fisheries policies that often tend to pay attention to resources that can be developed to generate large-scale income, employment, and trade. So if a project is coming into the government, they will say how much productivity can be increased, how much production will increase, or how much money will be generated, how can it develop trade. And another important factor, most government-driven development is focused on production, yield improvement, and return on investment. That becomes very attractive for granting projects. Now, open waters go off the radar. So the open water fishers, they are not in the radar at all. So, and more importantly, the players cannot attract allocation of funding support and any other benefit of the project. Now, they face a series of difficulties or find it impossible to obtain credit, extension services, marketing assistance, or similar aid from development programs. The problems are further compounded when the land and water body on which they are dependent is taken away for other urban development, roads, and other development processes. So, wild and enhanced fisheries are getting lesser attention, even in states with a vast riverine estuarine reservoir resources. Just now, Dr. Das was telling about this project that you have just completed. We are seeing that states which are having maximum river stretches, maximum reservoirs, and their policy statements hardly mentions this. They all talk about cage culture and they all talk about increasing production manifold, and sometimes they don't even mention, otherwise just namesake they mention, but they don't have any clear project for this, but it has got implication. Next slide, please. This deficient attention to open water fisheries has serious consequences. What are the serious consequences? Government of India says 23 million inland fishers in the country depend on these resources for their livelihood. Now, more significantly, half of them are women. Now, when states with very high number of such population lose focus on such resources, what happens is the inland open water resources, livelihood, food and nutritional security associated with these inland water bodies and the large section of vulnerable people in those states are seriously impacted. So this is why I told the tenure things has to be defined and chronicled, otherwise they will be totally losing out of the focus. So it is pertinent to note that these traditional fishers are skilled in fishing only. These 23 million people, they may not be 23, it may be much less, that is a little exaggerated. At least 6 million, 10 million is certainly there. So their skill is only for fishing. And you cannot say that aquaculture can absorb their labor, because aquaculture, they need a separate skill set and they will not be hired for that. So this is a very serious consequence of shifting from capture fishery to aquaculture and cultivation. Yes. Okay. I think, please, next one, please. So, what we can do? We should have shift in our approach in the both national level and state level. So, first of all, national and state policies should explicitly affirm that that communities, that fishing rights should be with the communities. Either it is a traditional fisher community or local community or a rehabilitated community. That is the one approach we have to take. That means giving to individuals for making profit where natural system is involved. One person given for profit making and others get only wages. That is not a very tenure. Then tenure governance in fisheries should be transferred to the state fisheries departments. Again, as I told, there are departments
who are not aware of the tenure practices and what are the desirable tenure practices. So those departments should know, at least even if they own their reservoir, tenure governance should be handed over to the fisheries department. Then there should be a value chain approach for seed production, markets, and processing, value addition. Say, unless there is a value chain approach, for example, the value addition and processing, we have some sort of feeling that this is only for export. That is not the case, because the domestic market also very important. Now domestic markets, value added projects are in demand, because if you go to a supermarket, see, you will be housewives, they are preferring ready to cook and ready to eat fish items. So these are for domestic market. Most of the prices in the domestic market is higher. It is higher or equal to the prices abroad. So that is not because our mindset has to change. And also the seed production, also there should be a value chain approach. And as I explained later, seed is an important thing. That is also important. So lease terms, private partnership. Also, private partnership is welcome, but at the same time, private partnership should not be at the cost of the livelihoods of people. So, keeping that in mind only, private partnership. Then, responsible fishing and fish farming practices. So, even the members of the fishers and fish farmers, they also are supposed to follow the code of conduct for responsible fisheries. I think you can finish quickly and I can come. Okay, I think I have only 3 more slides before I conclude. So, next one, there is this one, okay. There is an increasing trend of intensifying the fisheries, as I already explained. So, there is a increased stocking and cage culture in the same, sometimes in the same reservoir, there is a capture fishery, then stocking and also cage culture. Now, what we have to see is how the benefits are derived, not the income generated or who make the profits. Now, the tenure arrangements that governs this and how this might be changing, because changes in policy, society and fisheries technology, because changing technology is there, changing policies are there, they should take into account how it is going to benefit all sections of the society. If at the cost of fishers, you cannot allow benefits for other sections of the society. Then a very important thing is the objective of fisheries development. What is the objective of fisheries development? It is not to increase the benefit from the revenue. See, the problem is that many states, they are focusing on revenue. See, they say that the maximum revenue they get from water body to highest bidder, they give it to them. And also they give to people who may not be the members of the community. So the aim should not be to maximize the revenue, but development of the resource so that the productivity increase. When productivity is increased, everybody is benefited. So I was talking about stocking earlier. So there is a main problem in reservoir productivity is stocking. So why we are not stocking? What is the problem there? Because first of all, of course, we all know that seed infrastructure, seed production, we need fingerlings. 100 mm or 80 mm fingerlings we need for stocking, and that kind of fingerlings are not reared because people sell in the fry stage itself for aquaculture. So then another thing is the community should be I told community should do the stocking, not the government. Why government is stocking? Because government always want to keep that stocking part with them. So they stock the fish and ask fishers to fish or cooperative society fisher. The problem is that it is not a big deal. It is not the cost of the fry that because they are aware, they are not aware. If you can buy the seed, the next crop, next harvest, they can very well pay back the fish seed money and then still they can make a profit. Similarly, if they can make the market intervention, they can make themselves marketing. So they can, middlemen, what that 70 paisa, I told 70 paisa taken by the middlemen, they themselves can take. So what needed is that government should stop stocking. That is my view. And you ask the fish cooperative society or the community to stock and mend your stock and grow your stock and harvest. Now there should be a, next one please. There should be a shift from policy, shift from revenue generation approach to development approach. See, Rajasthan is one government where all the water bodies are leased out to individuals. Why they do? Because they get a lot of revenue. At one stage, that was when I was an NFDB, I think, at that time, there was a government noting that went to the chief minister asking to dissolve the fisheries department. They told fisheries department is not required. Their only job is to give auction the water bodies to contractor. That irrigation department itself can do it. Why another department were made? This is the kind of situation. But of course there was intervention and that move was stopped. So revenue generation should not be the aim. Development of fisheries and benefits to fishers should be aim. Then enforcement approach to participatory approach. This is again a problem. Mostly we give punitive action, punishment for not following the norms, rather than participatory mode. That means we have to replace the top-down approach from bottom-up. That is the only way to say. Otherwise, we don't have, no government has got enough police or even army to go to each stretch of a river and each stretch of a reservoir to police that it is norms are violated. So that's not possible unless participation and empowerment and enlightenment of the members is important. Then shift from a sectarian approach to integrated resource management approach. So sectarian approach means, a cage culture man, he is interested only in cage culture, and fisheries are interested only in the capture fishery, and similarly there are other water users. Water users, it is no water body is exclusively for fisheries. It is always a common water body. So apart from ponds, most of the open waters are multi-use. So integrated approach. Then creating an enabling environment for, number one, market intervention and marketing channels. Then value addition, as I told, value addition should be done so that they get a better price on their product. The utilizing the emerging market trends. So markets are different now than what it was a few decades ago. Now our domestic market is very lucrative and we only need some policy incentives so that we can do that. Then finally, the policy and incentives on benefits of at par with agriculture. Already I have mentioned this. So all the fish farmers should be given and the benefits that is given to agriculture farmers. So now the stocking, as I told, should be the responsibility of the community that manages the reservoir. Government does not have the wherewithal to stocking all reservoirs in this. So take one particular state, say take Karnataka. So if Karnataka state, there are thousands of reservoirs and the government does not have the wherewithal to produce all the fingerlings for all these reservoirs. The same to the country level also. There are more than 19,000 reservoirs in this country, and then you cannot, governments cannot have this function. So what happens is the community, they create a demand for fish seed. If there's a demand for fish seed, the private sector will fill that demand and they will supply it. You don't have to take, governments don't have to take the burden of producing all the fish seed required for stocking. Once you create a demand, the private sector will supply necessary. So now what government can do? Government can facilitate, empower and demonstrate. So how to get this done? That means they have to demonstrate this to the members of cooperative societies and give incentives. Suppose if somebody wants to raise the fingerlings and supply to the cooperative society, so they can be initially given some money, say seed money or what you call the revolving fund, so that once they harvest, they can repay that. Unless this is done, this government stocking and people fishing, that will not work anymore. So government's role should be limited to facilitate, empower or demonstrate or provide incentives in the form of initial seed money, revolving fund or a soft loan for stocking. It should be loan, not subsidy. Loan, so that they pay back. Otherwise there will not be any incentive. So, and then also help marketing infrastructure, seed production infrastructure. I think that's all I have. So concluding what we have discussed so far, One is most inland fisheries and fish farming falls under small scale fisheries. That is number one point I wanted to tell you. Second is tenure system in inland fisheries is very complex and a mix of traditional, formal and informal practices. The concept is still emerging. Then the institutions and governance are weak and need support from policy level. Inadequate reforms in tenure and access along with lack of institutional support can adversely impact livelihoods. Then value of fishery-based livelihood in inland open waters needs much better appreciation than they get now. National and state policies need to focus on open water fisheries and value they add to the livelihood. They should recognize the value they add to the livelihood. Normally, that is not recognized because they look at things at the monetary value. So that, as I was telling Sebastian, when water productivity, what is water productivity? Each liter of water, what benefit it can give. So water productivity is calculated as how many kilograms of grains can be produced from 1,000 liters of water, how much electricity can be developed from how many cusacks of water, and this way they calculate in monetary terms. But then value of the downstreams or the rivers and open waters, that value in terms of livelihood support and biodiversity conservation, that is to be recognized. Valuation is to be done, and that value should be added so that they get better appreciation. Otherwise, they will always get ignored in the process of development. Thank you very much.